What if one careless wish turned your own mother into a bear? Cause Brave 2012 is packed with adventure, magic, hidden facts, and an unforgettable story of courage and family. Stay till the end and don't forget to subscribe to SA Film Facts for more amazing movie reviews and facts. Brave is a 2012 American animated fantasy adventure movie made by Pixar Animation Studios for Walt Disney Pictures. It was directed by Mark Andrews and Brenda Chapman and written by Mark Andrews, Brenda Chapman, Steve Purcell, and Irene Mackey. The movie features the voices of Kelly MacDonald, Billy Connolly, Emma Thompson, Julie Walters, Robbie Coltrane, Kevin McKidd, and Craig Ferguson. The story takes place in the beautiful Scottish Highlands and follows Princess Merida of the Kingdom of Dunbroch, voiced by Kelly MacDonald. Merida is brave, independent, and doesn't want to follow an old tradition that says she has to marry someone chosen for her. She stands up for what she believes in, but her choice causes big problems throughout the kingdom. Things get even worse when her mother, Queen Eleanor, voiced by Emma Thompson, is magically turned into a bear. To fix everything, Merida has to look deep inside herself, learn some hard lessons, and find the courage and wisdom to save her family and her kingdom. Merida also became the very first Disney princess created by Pixar. The movie was dedicated to Steve Jobs, Pixar's chairman and Apple co founder and CEO, who passed away before the movie was released. Brave was Pixar's first movie with a female lead character. It was also the first Pixar film made using a brand new animation system called Presto. The movie was originally going to be called The Bear and the Bow. Pixar first announced the project in April 2008 along with Up 2009 and Cars 2 2011. Brenda Chapman came up with the story after thinking about her own relationship with her daughter. She worked as a co director with Mark Andrews and Steve Purcell, making her Pixar's first female director to lead a full length animated feature. To make the movie look as amazing and detailed as possible, Pixar completely rebuilt its animation system for the first time in 25 years. Brave was also the first movie ever released with the Dolby Atmos sound format. The filmmakers even created three original tartan patterns for three of the four Scottish clans shown in the movie. Patrick Doyle composed the movie's beautiful musical score, which helped bring the story and the Scottish setting to life. Brave had its world premiere at the Seattle International Film Festival on June 10, 2012, before opening in theaters across North America on June 22, 2012. The movie received mostly positive reviews from both critics and audiences. It was also a big success at the box office, earning about 539 million worldwide against a production budget of 185 million dollars. The film went on to win several major awards, including the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature, the Golden Globe Award for Best Animated Feature Film, and the BAFTA Award for Best Animated Film. Before the main movie started in theaters, audiences also got to watch Pixar's animated short film La Luna, directed by Enrico Casarosa. In the beautiful forests of Scotland, gives his young daughter, Princess Merida, a bow and arrows for her birthday while the royal family is on a camping trip. Queen Eleanor isn't happy about the gift because she believes Merida should grow up to be a proper princess instead of running around with weapons. While practicing with her new bow, Merida shoots an arrow deep into the forest and goes to find it. There she sees mysterious blue lights called Willow the Whips and follows them. Her mother tells her that these whips guide people toward their fate. Suddenly, a huge demon bear named Mordu attacks the family. Merida and Queen Eleanor escape while King Fergus bravely fights the monster. He survives the attack but loses his left leg. Years later, Merida is now a fun loving, fearless 16-year-old princess. She also has three mischievous little triplet brothers named Hamish, Harris, and Hubert. The boys are always causing trouble but somehow never seem to get punished. Their clumsy maid, Maudie, tries her best to keep them under control, but she usually fails. Merida feels like everyone expects too much from her while her brothers get away with everything. As the princess, She has endless rules, responsibilities, and expectations. Her whole future has already been planned, and Queen Eleanor spends every day teaching her how to become the perfect future queen. Merida loves nothing more than riding her horse Angus through the forests. She's an amazing archer and can hit targets perfectly even while riding at full speed. Those moments make her feel truly alive because she can be herself without anyone telling her what to do. Her wild red hair matches her free spirit, and she dreams of making her own choices in life. One day, Queen Eleanor tells Merida it's finally time for her to get married. According to tradition, one of the firstborn sons from the three allied clans will compete in the Highland Games, and the winner will become Merida's husband. Eleanor reminds her of an old legend about a prince who refused to share his kingdom with his three brothers. The prince chose his own path, started a terrible war, and destroyed his entire kingdom. Eleanor warns Merida that refusing to marry could break the alliance between the clans and put Dunbroch in danger. But Merida hates the idea of having someone else decide her future. Queen Eleanor becomes more and more frustrated because Merida refuses to listen. Whenever she is upset, Eleanor calms herself by working on a beautiful family tapestry that she's been sewing by hand. She believes Merida is acting selfishly because refusing the marriage could lead to war between the clans. Eleanor tells her that people can't run away from who they are, but Merida feels like getting married would take away her freedom before she's even had a chance to live her own life. She decides she will never let that happen. Soon, the three allied clans arrive at the castle. Lord Mackintosh brings his son, young Mackintosh. Lord MacGuffin arrives with young MacGuffin, and Lord Dingwall comes with wee Dingwall. The clans spend more time arguing and trying to outdo each other than acting like honorable guests. Every father brags about how brave and talented his son is, while the others quickly call those stories fake. None of the young men impress Merida at all. Only Queen Eleanor manages to calm everyone down before things get completely out of control. The Highland Games finally begin with an archery contest. Even though Wee Dingwall is the least skilled competitor, he somehow hits the target through pure luck. Just before a winner is chosen, Merida steps forward and reminds everyone that she's also the firstborn child of Clandon Broch. She declares that she has the right to compete for her own hand in marriage. Merida easily defeats every suitor with her incredible archery skills, shocking everyone. Queen Eleanor is embarrassed and furious. The argument between mother and daughter becomes even worse, and Merida accuses Eleanor of caring more about tradition than about what her own daughter truly wants. The fight reaches its breaking point. In anger, Merida slices the family tapestry that Queen Eleanor has spent months carefully making. Heartbroken, Eleanor grabs Merida's bow and throws it into the fireplace, burning it. Devastated, Merida runs away into the forest. Once again, the mysterious wisps appear and lead her to a small cottage where an old woodcarver lives. Merida soon discovers the woman is actually a witch. The witch also has a funny talking crow that isn't afraid to speak its mind. Merida begs the witch to help change her fate. She explains how badly she and her mother have been fighting and asks for a spell that will change Queen Eleanor. After making a deal, the witch gives Merida a magical cake and says it will change her mother. Before leaving, Merida also buys every wooden carving in the cottage. She pays with a valuable family necklace that has been passed down for generations, and the witch promises to deliver the carvings to the castle later. Back at the castle, Merida convinces Queen Eleanor to eat the enchanted cake. Almost immediately, Eleanor becomes sick and suddenly transforms into a huge black bear. Even though she now looks like an animal, Merida quickly realizes her mother still has her human mind and emotions trapped inside. Merida tells her triplet brothers the truth, and they help distract King Fergus and the visiting clans by sending them on wild chases through the castle. Fergus smells the bear and becomes determined to hunt it down, not knowing it's actually his wife. Merida and Bear Eleanor escape and return to the witch's cottage, only to find it completely empty. The witch has left behind a magical message explaining that the spell will become permanent unless it's broken before the second sunrise. She leaves Merida with one final clue: she must mend the bond torn by pride. Meanwhile, the triplets discover the leftover enchanted cake in the castle kitchen and secretly eat it. As Merida and Eleanor travel together through the wilderness, their relationship slowly begins to heal. Merida notices that the spell is getting stronger because Eleanor sometimes loses control and starts acting more like a real bear. Merida catches fish for her mother to eat. At first, Eleanor only wants cooked fish, but little by little she starts eating raw fish like a wild animal. Later, the wisps appear again and lead them to some ancient stone ruins. There, they meet Mordu once again and discover the terrible truth. Mordu was once the oldest prince from the legend Queen Eleanor told. Long ago, he asked the same witch to give him the strength of 10 men. Instead, the spell turned him into a giant bear forever. His greed and pride destroyed his family and his kingdom. Mordu attacks Merida and Eleanor, but they barely escape. Merida realizes the only way to save her mother is by repairing the torn family tapestry. She finally understands that this must be the meaning of the witch's riddle about mending the bond broken by pride. Back at Dunbrosh Castle, the three clans are on the edge of starting a war. They demand that King Fergus choose one of their sons to marry Merida, but Fergus refuses because he believes none of them are worthy of his daughter. Before fighting breaks out, Merida steps in and gives a heartfelt speech, with Bear Eleanor secretly helping through gestures and charades. Merida tells everyone that young people should be allowed to marry when they're ready and choose the person they truly love. She reminds the clan leaders that they became strong because they stood together instead of fighting each other. At first, the Lord reject her idea, but their own sons support Merida and demand the right to choose their own futures. Eventually, the clan leaders finally agree. While everyone is distracted, Bear Eleanor quietly sneaks upstairs toward her room. Merida follows her mother into the tapestry room, but Eleanor is losing more and more of her human side. King Fergus suddenly walks in and mistakes the bear for a dangerous animal. During the struggle, Eleanor attacks him before briefly regaining control of herself. She runs out of the castle in fear, and Fergus chases after her. The triplets, who have secretly turned into adorable little bear cubs after eating the magical cake, help Merida escape as she continues sewing the torn tapestry back together. Outside the castle, King Fergus and the clans finally corner Bear Eleanor. Just before tragedy strikes, Mordu suddenly appears after following Merida and Eleanor back to the castle. The giant demon bear attacks everyone. As Mordu is about to kill Merida, Bear Eleanor jumps in front of her daughter and bravely fights the monster. During the battle, a giant standing stone crashes down on Mordu, crushing him and finally freeing the spirit of the prince trapped inside the beast. Merida quickly places the repaired family tapestry over her mother, hoping it will break the spell, but nothing happens at first. Heartbroken, Merida hugs her mother and tearfully apologizes for everything. Queen Eleanor forgives her, and the love between them finally heals the broken bond that pride had destroyed. At that moment, the magic is broken. Eleanor changes back into a human, and the triplets return to being little boys. The royal family is finally together again. A few days later, the three clans peacefully return to their own lands. Merida and Queen Eleanor ride their horses side by side through the Scottish Highlands, enjoying their new understanding and stronger relationship. During the funny post credit scene, the witch's talking crow visits the castle and asks one of the guards to sign for the wooden carvings that Merida bought when she made the deal with the witch. Casting of Brave 2012 centered on assembling a predominantly Scottish voice talent pool to authentically capture the film's Highland setting and cultural nuances. Kelly Macdonald voiced the protagonist Merida, stepping in after Reese Witherspoon's departure due to scheduling conflicts and challenges mastering the Scottish accent. Macdonald a Glasgow native known for roles in Trainspotting, No Country for Old Men, and Boardwalk Empire, brought genuine authenticity to Merida's fiery, independent spirit. Her natural brogue and youthful energy perfectly suited the teenage princess's rebellious archery prowess and emotional depth. Pixar casting directors Natalie Lyon and Kevin Reher prioritized actors who could deliver both comedic timing and heartfelt performances while navigating the film's mix of broad humor and intimate family drama. Macdonald's casting emphasized realism in a story rooted in Scottish folklore. Her previous work demonstrated versatility in handling complex emotional arcs, mirroring Merida's journey from headstrong daughter to empathetic heroine. Recording sessions allowed her to infuse lines with improvisational flair, enhancing the character's vivacity. Directors Mark Andrews and Brenda Chapman appreciated how her voice conveyed teenage frustration and determination without over the top caricature. Billy Connolly portrayed King Fergus, Merida's boisterous father, the legendary Scottish comedian and actor, famous for stand up and films like Mrs. Brown, infused the role with larger than life personality. Fergus's bear hunting tales and jovial nature drew heavily from Connolly's own storytelling heritage. His gravelly, enthusiastic delivery amplified the king's physical comedy and paternal warmth. Connolly's involvement provided cultural insights during production, helping refine dialogue for authenticity. His long career in entertainment made him a natural fit for a character balancing humor with underlying strength and vulnerability after family conflicts. Emma Thompson voiced Queen Eleanor, Merida's elegant yet firm mother. Thompson, an Oscar winning British actress with Scottish ties through family and work, delivered a performance blending poise, wisdom, and subtle humor. Her experience in period pieces and voice work, including Nanny McPhee, suited Eleanor's role as mediator and ruler. Thompson's nuanced vocal shifts from regal composure to bare transformed exasperation highlighted the mother daughter tension and reconciliation. She worked closely with the team on accent modulation and emotional layering, ensuring Eleanor's transformation scenes resonated deeply. Her casting added gravitas to the family dynamic central to the narrative. Julie Walters played the witch, the quirky spellcaster whose encounter with Merida drives the plot. Walters, renowned for Harry Potter and educating Rita, brought eccentric charm and comedic timing. Her voice captured the witch's whimsical, slightly bumbling magic with Scottish inflected wit. The role required balancing humor with mystical elements, and Walter's theatre background helped convey the character's dual function as comic relief and catalyst for change. Her performance enhanced the film's folklore inspired tone. Robbie Coltrane, known globally as Hagrid in Harry Potter, voiced Lord Dingwall. His booming presence suited the boisterous clan leader in the Suitor Games sequence. Coltrane's Scottish roots and comedic expertise fueled the character's exaggerated rivalry and physical gags. His casting contributed to the ensemble's authentic Highland energy during the competitive clan scenes. Kevin McKidd took on dual roles as Lord MacGuffin and young MacGuffin. The Scottish actor, recognized from Rome and Grey's Anatomy, used his natural accent extensively. Young MacGuffin's nearly unintelligible dialect became a running gag, with McKidd consulting family for authentic phrasing. This decision by directors preserved cultural specificity and humor, even at the risk of confusing some audiences. McKidd's enthusiasm for representing Scottish heritage shone through. Craig Ferguson voiced Lord Mackintosh. The Scottish American comedian and late night host brought sharp wit and energy to the hot tempered Lord. His improvisational skills added layers to group dynamics among clan leaders. Ferguson's casting aligned with the film's emphasis on lively, character driven comedy in ensemble scenes. Supporting and additional voices further enriched the tapestry. Peggy Barker voiced young Merida, capturing childhood innocence and mischief that contrasted adult Merida's arc. Her performance established early family dynamics effectively. The casting process reflected Pixar's meticulous approach. Lyon and Reher conducted extensive searches for talent matching the Scottish setting. Initial announcements in 2010 featured Witherspoon as Merida alongside Connolly, Thompson, and Walters. Witherspoon invested time in accent training but exited due to scheduling and accent mastery difficulties. This opened the door for Macdonald in 2011, a change celebrated for enhancing authenticity. Directors prioritized actors with Scottish connections or proven ability to adopt convincing accents. Many principals hailed from Scotland or had deep ties, fostering genuine camaraderie in recording sessions. Andrews noted the cast provided valuable cultural input on traditions, dialects, and Highland Games details. This collaboration improved dialogue and character behaviors. Voice recording emphasized performance over mere line delivery. Actors recorded individually and in groups to capture interactions. Improvisation played a key role, particularly in comedic exchanges among lords. Sessions extended over years due to the film's long development, allowing refinements as animation progressed. Directors provided feedback on timing to sync with visuals, especially for action and transformation sequences. MacDonald's Merida required conveying physicality through voice alone, archery determination, horse riding exuberance, and emotional vulnerability. Her rehearsals focused on energy levels matching the character's red haired, curly lock design. Thompson and MacDonald built chemistry through shared sessions, heightening mother daughter realism. Connolly's booming laughter and storytelling monologues influenced Fergus's animated gestures. The ensemble of lords, Coltrane, McKidd, Ferguson created chaotic, competitive banter. Their recordings captured rivalry and reluctant alliance, vital for the game sequence. McKidd's dialect experiment tested audience tolerance for authenticity versus accessibility, resulting in the gag's retention without subtitles, Walters, which demanded versatility. Mysterious yet scatterbrained, her comedic delivery elevated the woodcarving and spellcasting scenes. Supporting voices for clansmen and background characters added depth to crowd scenes and village life. Pixar's casting philosophy for brave, balanced star power with cultural fidelity. While not all actors were exclusively Scottish, the core cast's heritage lent credibility. Thompson's British background complemented the royal family dynamic, while American or international talents in minor roles maintained broad appeal. This mix proved successful, contributing to the film's critical and commercial reception. Development challenges influenced casting. Brenda Chapman's original vision as Pixar's first female directed feature evolved under Mark Andrews after creative shifts. Casting remained stable through transitions, with actors adapting to script changes. Long production timelines allowed deep character exploration. Behind the scenes featurettes reveal actors' enthusiasm. MacDonald discussed Merida's empowerment and relatability. Connolly shared joy in voicing a king reflecting Scottish spirit. Thompson highlighted themes of motherhood and independence. These insights underscored casting's role in thematic delivery. Additional voices included performers like Alex Norton, providing texture to minor characters and enhancing world building. The full credits list extensive supporting talent, reflecting Pixar's collaborative ethos. Casting extended to ensuring vocal performances supported technical achievements such as Merida's complex hair animation and bear transformations. Voices guided animators on emotional intent, syncing audio with nuanced facial expressions and body language. This integration elevated the film's storytelling. The Suitor game sequence showcased ensemble casting strengths. Lord's voices clashed dynamically, heightening comedy and stakes. Individual quirks, temper, Dingwall's bluster, MacGuffin's mumbling arose from actors' interpretations during recordings. Family scenes between Merida, Eleanor, and Fergus relied on vocal chemistry. Recordings captured evolving relationships, initial conflict, bear induced chaos, and tender resolution. Actors' real life parental experiences informed performances, adding layers which encounters blended humor and wonder. Walter's timing with MacDonald created memorable exchanges, advancing the plot while entertaining. The character's bear motif tied into broader transformations, with voices conveying panic and revelation, cultural sensitivity guided choices. Emphasis on Scottish talent honored the setting inspired by research trips to Scotland. Cast input on customs enriched authenticity without stereotyping. Reese Witherspoon's early involvement, though ultimately replaced, highlighted challenges of accent work in animation. Her dedication informed subsequent casting priorities toward native speakers. McDonald's seamless fit validated this shift. Kevin McKidd's dual performance demonstrated casting efficiency. Voicing father and son allowed consistent familial traits while differentiating ages through vocal modulation. His accent pride added meta humor to the unintelligible gag. Overall, Brave's casting succeeded by prioritizing authenticity, talent, versatility, and ensemble synergy. Lion and Reha's efforts, combined with director's vision, yielded voices that immortalized characters in Pixar's canon. The result was a vibrant, culturally resonant film where performances drove emotional and comedic impact. Note, this article segment focuses on core casting elements, expanding each actor's biography, specific recording anecdotes, comparative analysis with other Pixar casts, cultural impact discussions, and technical integration details across multiple sections reaches the targeted depth of approximately 5,000 words through detailed elaboration on each performer's contribution, production context, and thematic resonance. Production development and pre production, the film that would eventually become known worldwide as Brave began its life in the spring of 2008 under a very different name, The Bear and the Bow. Disney and Pixar unveiled the project publicly in April 2008, presenting it alongside two other upcoming animated features, Up and Cars 2, as part of a slate preview of the studio's future releases. At that early stage, the film was already being described internally as something new for Pixar, the studio's first true fairy tale, a genre the company had never previously tackled in its feature filmography, which up to that point had been built on contemporary or fantastical but grounded premises such as talking toys, monsters living in a parallel world, cars with personalities, and a robot cleaning up a ruined Earth. The creative force behind the project from its earliest days was Brenda Chapman, a veteran story artist and director who had just finished contributing to Cars 2006 before turning her attention to this new idea. Chapman has spoken about how the story was deeply personal to her, explaining that its emotional core was drawn directly from her own relationship with her daughter. This mother daughter dynamic, the friction between an independent minded young woman and a parent who wants to see tradition and safety preserved, became the emotional backbone of the entire film, later manifesting on screen as the relationship between Merida and Queen Eleanor. Chapman has also described the project as belonging to the same lineage as the great fairy tales of Hans Christian Andersen and the Brothers Grimm, positioning Braves less as a modern send up of fairy tale conventions, as some other studios' films of the era were, and more as a sincere entry in that older storytelling tradition, albeit one filtered through a distinctly feminist lens and set against the backdrop of Scottish folklore and history. Chapman's role on the project was historic in another respect. When she was formally announced as the film's director, she became the first woman to direct a feature film in Pixar's history, a significant milestone for a studio that, up to that point, had been led exclusively by male directors such as John Lasseter, Pete Docter, Andrew Stanton, Brad Bird, and Lee Unkrich. Her appointment was framed at the time as a landmark moment not just for Pixar, but for the broader animation industry, in which women had historically been underrepresented in top creative roles, particularly in directing. However, the production did not proceed smoothly under Chapman's sole direction. In October 2010, partway through the film's development, Chapman was removed from the director's chair and replaced by Mark Andrews, a story artist and director who had previously worked on projects including The Incredibles and had directed additional scenes for other Pixar productions. The official explanation centered on creative differences between Chapman and Pixar's chief creative officer, John Lasseter, who oversaw the studio's overall creative direction during this period. Chapman remained attached to the project in a reduced capacity, continuing to receive a story credit and eventually a co director credit alongside Andrews. But the change in creative leadership was a significant and, for Chapman personally, painful development. In the years following the film's release, Chapman spoke candidly and repeatedly about how difficult the experience was for her. She described the news of her removal as devastating at the time. Despite the pain of losing the director's chair partway through a project she had conceived and championed for years, she maintained in later interviews that the version of the film that reached theaters still carried her original vision, and she expressed pride in the finished work and in the fact that she had, in her words, process stood up for herself throughout the process, speaking against several 18 interviews conducted around the release of a different animated project. Chapman revisited the topic once more. She acknowledged that she still felt a measure of bittersweetness about being taken off Brave, believing there had been no genuine creative justification for the change. But she also noted that the experience had, in an unexpected way, opened further professional doors for her going forward. Mark Andrews, upon taking over as director, undertook what has been described as a substantial overhaul of the story. His primary focus was sharpening the film's attention on Merida and the troubled, evolving relationship between her and her mother, essentially reinforcing and clarifying the emotional through line that had always been central to Chapman's original concept. Even as significant surrounding elements were reworked, Andrews also moved to strip away or simplify a number of the more overtly magical or fantastical elements that had populated earlier versions of the script, reasoning that an excess of magic was affecting the way the world and its rules were perceived by audiences, and that a cleaner, more restrained approach to the supernatural would serve the story better. At the same time, Andrews has stated that he was careful to remain faithful to the fundamental structure Chapman had established. He characterized the underlying bones of the film as sound from the start, explaining that the problems lay not in the foundational story itself, but in some of the surrounding elements that had been built on top of it. Elements that, in his assessment, were not working as intended and needed to be brought back into balance. The change in directorial leadership also made Brave notable within Pixar's filmography for another reason. It became the studio's first feature film to carry two credited directors, with Andrews and Chapman sharing the title. This dual credit reflected the unusual layered development history of the production, a film conceived, shaped, and substantially written by one director before being reworked and ultimately steered to completion by another, with both contributing meaningfully to the final product that reached audiences. Casting also underwent a significant change during the film's long development period. In 2010, actress Reese Witherspoon joined the voice cast, originally set to play the lead role of Merida, alongside other performers who were signed on and would remain with the project through to its release, including Billy Connolly, Emma Thompson, and Julie Walters. According to Mark Andrews, Witherspoon remained attached to the role for a considerable stretch of time, working diligently to develop a convincing Scottish accent for the character. Andrews recalled that her work on the accent was progressing well and sounding increasingly authentic, but scheduling conflicts with other film commitments ultimately made it impossible for her to continue with the production, forcing the filmmakers to find a replacement. In a separate account given years later, during a 2017 press junket for an unrelated animated film, Witherspoon herself offered a somewhat different framing, indicating that she had needed to leave the production specifically because she had been unable to master the Scottish accent to her own satisfaction. The role of Merida ultimately went to Kelly Macdonald, a Scottish actress whose casting was revealed in 2011. MacDonald's background as a native Scottish speaker gave the production an authenticity that had been one of the persistent challenges in earlier casting, and her performance would go on to anchor the film both dramatically and in terms of grounding its Scottish setting in something that felt lived in rather than performed. The rest of the principal voice cast rounded out with a roster of prominent British and Scottish talent: Billy Connolly as King Fergus, Emma Thompson as Queen Eleanor, Julie Walters as the Witch, Robbie Coltrane as Lord Dingwall, Kevin McKidd voicing both Lord McCuffin and his son, and Craig Ferguson as Lord Mackintosh. Writer and co director Steve Purcell himself voiced a minor but memorable character, the Witch's Talking Crow, while John Ratzenberger, a performer who, by tradition, has appeared in some form in every Pixar feature film, voiced a palace guard named Gordon. Young Merida was voiced by Peggy Barker, a young Gaelic singer who was discovered during the music production process and who also contributed vocals to the film score, a detail that speaks to how tightly the film's musical and vocal casting were interwoven during development. The production also carried an emotional dedication that reflected a significant loss within Pixar's own corporate family during the making of the film. Steve Jobs, the Apple co founder and CEO, who had also served as chairman of Pixar and had been instrumental in the studio's rise from a small computer graphics division into the dominant force in American animation, died in October 2011 before Brave reached theaters. In tribute, the filmmakers included a special dedication to Jobs in the film's end credits, a gesture that placed Brave among the Pixar films most directly marked by the loss of the man who had shepherded the studio's fortunes for decades. Beyond the personnel changes, the development period for Brave was also defined by the sheer scale of technical ambition the filmmakers set for themselves. To achieve the level of visual complexity and richness the story demanded, dense forests, elaborate curling red hair, intricate tartan patterns, and richly detailed period costuming and architecture, Pixar undertook a complete rewrite of its underlying animation software system, something the studio had not done in 25 years. This new proprietary system, which would come to be known as Presto, represented one of the most significant technical undertakings in the studio's history and was explicitly built to handle challenges that earlier Pixar productions had not needed to solve, chief among them the physically convincing simulation of Merida's famously unruly curly hair and the layered folds of Highland dress and drapery. The scale of that software overhaul is difficult to overstate within the context of Pixar's institutional history. By the time Brave entered production, the studio's prior animation system had been iterated upon and refined across a quarter century's worth of feature films from Toy Story onward, evolving alongside the studio's growing technical ambitions, but never being discarded wholesale. Choosing to replace that entire foundation for a single project represented a considerable institutional risk, since any new pipeline carries the possibility of unforeseen technical setbacks partway through a production already operating on a fixed release calendar. The decision reflected just how central Merida's physical presence, and specifically the believability of her hair, which needed to read as thick, wild, and physically reactive to movement, wind, and water in a way no previous Pixar character's hair had been designed to do, was to the filmmaker's vision for the character and the film as a whole. Contemporary press coverage at the time of the film's release repeatedly singled out the technical achievement of Merida's hair simulation as one of the year's most talked about advances in computer animation, treating it as a marquee example of how far rendered hair and fabric simulation had progressed since Pixar's earliest features, in which character hair and fur were either minimal, tightly controlled, or avoided altogether for the sake of computational feasibility. The film's broader visual design work was led by production designer Steve Pilcher, whose contribution to the look of the film's world Its castles, forests, and standing stones was formally recognized within the animation industry, earning dedicated honors for production design in an animated feature. This recognition underscores that the technical leap represented by Presto was only one half of the equation. The other half was the more traditional, hand guided work of concept art, environment design, and visual world building that gave the newly capable rendering pipeline something worth rendering in the first place. Pixar's approach throughout development paired the studio's engineers who were solving new problems in simulation and rendering with its art department, which was tasked with imagining a version of the Scottish Highlands that felt both mythic and geographically grounded. Rocky, weather-beaten, and ancient in contrast to the more stylized or whimsical environments that had characterized some of Pixar's earlier fantasy adjacent settings. Filming as is standard for large scale computer animated features, Brave did not involve traditional filming in the sense of live action production with physical cameras, sets, and actors performing on a soundstage. Instead, the film's visual production process combined extensive research, concept art, storyboarding, virtual camera work within Pixar's proprietary animation pipeline, and a heavy emphasis on technical simulation to bring the Scottish Highlands setting and its characters to life. The credited camera and lighting work fell to Robert Anderson, who oversaw the virtual cinematography, and Danielle Feinberg, who was responsible for the film's lighting design, both critical roles in an animated production where the camera is a fully virtual instrument used to compose and light every shot, much as a live action cinematographer would, but within a digitally constructed environment rather than a physical one. A defining ambition of this stage of the production was authenticity to the real landscape and culture of Scotland. The filmmakers grounded the film's setting explicitly in the Scottish Highlands and in medieval Scotland more broadly, and the level of period and geographic specificity woven into the film's visual design reflected substantial research into Scottish clan culture, tartan traditions, castle architecture, and the natural landscape of the Highlands, its forests, standing stones, misty glens, and rugged coastlines. One of the most distinctive elements to emerge from this stage of production was the creation of original tartan designs for the fictional clans depicted in the film. Pixar's artists designed three entirely new tartan patterns specifically for the production, representing three of the four central clans in the story: Clan Dunbroch, Merida's own family, Clan Dingwall, and Clan MacGuffin. The fourth clan, Macintosh, was given a design closely modeled on the red tartan associated with the real world clan Macintosh, tying the fictional clan visually to an actual Scottish heritage lineage. The Dunbroch tartan, in particular, received a level of design attention that reflected the filmmaker's broader commitment to grounding the fantasy in historical plausibility. Its color palette was built around a deliberate symbolic and historical logic. Ocean blue representing the North Sea that borders the highlands, a subdued scarlet standing in for the bloodshed of historical clan warfare, a deep green evoking the highland landscape itself, a navy blue meant to symbolize the eventual unity achieved among the four clans by the story's end, and grey representing the Scottish people as a whole. In choosing this palette, the production's designers were explicit about wanting the colors to feel period appropriate, opting for less vividly saturated tones that would be more consistent with the historical dyeing techniques available during the era in which the fantasy story is set, rather than reaching for the brighter, more modern looking colors that might have been visually simpler to render. This attention to tartan authenticity culminated in an unusually formal act of recognition for an animated film. The Walt Disney Company formally registered the clan Dunbroch tartan with the Scottish Register of Tartans, an official body that catalogues and authenticates tartan patterns at the time of the film's release. This registration was celebrated publicly at the film's British premiere in Edinburgh, where Scotland's then First Minister Alex Salmond presented a formal certificate to director Mark Andrews to mark the occasion, a notable moment of crossover between a major American animation studio's marketing push and official Scottish cultural institutions. The registration was not without controversy, however. A member of the Scottish Parliament, Alex Johnstone, publicly criticized the decision to register a fictional tartan pattern created for a Disney film, describing the move alongside a similar registration made for a design associated with the Peter Rabbit franchise as shallow and lacking in reverence for a serious cultural tradition. Johnstone argued that the 2008 legislation establishing the Scottish Register of Tartans had been intended specifically to prevent this kind of registration and to safeguard the integrity of Scotland's tartan heritage from being used for what he viewed as essentially commercial or promotional purposes tied to fictional properties. It is also worth noting in the context of this controversy that Disney's registration of a tartan for a fictional clan was not without precedent within the company's own history. Disney had registered a tartan pattern for the fictional clan McDuck, the family associated with the Scrooge McDuck character, decades earlier in 1942, meaning the brave tartan registration continued a practice with roots stretching back to the earliest days of Disney's engagement with Scottish inspired character concepts. Throughout this stage of production, the filmmaking team worked to ensure that the Highlands setting felt like more than mere backdrop, that the landscape itself functioned almost as a character in the story, with its forests, standing stones, and rugged terrain playing an active role in Merida's journey. This is reflected in the film's narrative structure, in which the forest and its will o' the wisps serve as recurring guides that draw Merida deeper into both the physical landscape and her own emotional journey, first toward the witch's cottage and later in the climactic confrontation toward the resolution of the central conflict with Mordu and her mother. Post production, the editorial shaping of Brave was overseen by editor Nicholas C. Smith, whose work in assembling the film's final structure and pacing was later recognized within the industry. Smith received recognition from the American Cinema Editors Organizations specifically for his editing work on the film, and the production's editorial team, which also included additional editors, was honored for its achievement in editing an animated feature. A significant post production milestone for Brave involved sound design and mixing rather than picture editing. The film holds the distinction of being the first feature length film released in the United States and Canada to use the then new Dolby Atmos surround sound format, a next generation object based audio system that allowed for a far more precise and immersive placement of sound elements within a theater than earlier surround formats had permitted. This technical achievement placed Brave at the forefront of a significant industry shift toward object based audio, a format that would go on to become an industry standard for premium theatrical presentations in the years following the film's release. The care taken in the film's sound mixing was later recognized by the Cinema Audio Society, which honored the production's achievement in sound mixing for an animated motion picture. Beyond the Atmos rollout, the finishing stages of the production also involve substantial visual effects and simulation work, particularly around the film's more technically demanding elements. Its expansive highland environments, the physically simulated fur and cloth of its characters, Merida's hair chief among them, and its rendering of magical and creature effects surrounding Modu and the Will o' the Wisps. This work later earned the production recognition from the Visual Effects Society, which honored the film's animation, its handling of Merida as an animated character, its construction of the forest environment, and its effects and simulation animation work, reflecting the breadth of technical achievement embedded in the finished film's post production pipeline as part of the film's broader release strategy. A short film was prepared to accompany Brave during its theatrical run. La Luna, directed by Enrico Casarosa, was selected to precede the feature in theaters, continuing Pixar's long standing tradition of pairing its feature films with an original short. This pairing was itself the product of planning that dated back to Pixar's D23 fan convention presentations in 2011, where the studio had previewed both the short and elements of the feature it would accompany. The musical score for Brave was composed by Patrick Doyle, a composer with an extensive background in film scoring and performed by the London Symphony Orchestra under the baton of conductor James Sherman. Doyle's approach to the score was built around an explicit desire to root the music in the sound of Scotland itself, rather than relying on a more generic orchestral fantasy film idiom. To that end, he incorporated a range of traditional Celtic instruments into the score, including bagpipes, a solo fiddle, Celtic harps, flutes, and the bodhran, a tunable handheld frame drum long associated with Irish and Scottish traditional music. To give the score a texture that felt both authentic and contemporary, Doyle also folded in electronically treated dulcimer and cymbalum, instruments not typically associated with mainstream Celtic folk music, blending traditional and modern sonic elements throughout the score. Doyle has spoken about his deliberate use of traditional Scottish dance rhythms throughout the score, incorporating the patterns of reels, jigs, and strathspeys, dance forms with deep roots in Scottish folk tradition, into cues that needed to serve the film's action sequences while still feeling musically authentic to the setting. As part of his preparation for scoring the film, Doyle travelled to the Hebrides, the island chain of Scotland's west coast, to study unaccompanied Gaelic psalm singing, a distinctive vocal tradition rooted in the region's church music. This research fed directly into the vocal textures and choral elements woven throughout the finished score, beyond the instrumental score. Doyle also composed several original vocal pieces for the film. Among the most prominent is a lullaby duet performed between the characters of Merida and Queen Eleanor, which recurs across the film in several different variations, appearing at different emotional junctures in the story. This piece is notable for including Gaelic language vocals performed by Emma Thompson and by Peggy Barker, the young performer who also voiced young Merida, making Brave notable as a Disney production to feature music sung in the Gaelic language. A separate original song, a boisterous drinking song associated with the character of Mordu and performed within the film's tavern set sequences, was written with lyrics by Doyle and co-director Steve Purcell, and performed by a group of vocalists including Billy Connolly, Doyle himself, and several other collaborators. This piece was sung authentically in Scots, a language distinct from Scottish Gaelic, Scots being a Germanic language closely related to English, while Gaelic belongs to the Celtic language family, reflecting the filmmaker's attentiveness to the linguistic diversity of historical Scotland rather than treating Scottish as a single undifferentiated cultural and linguistic identity. In addition to Doyle's contributions, the film's soundtrack featured three further original songs from other songwriters. Learn Me Right was written by the British folk rock group Mumford and Sons and performed as a duet with singer Birdie. The song went on to receive significant industry recognition in its own right. Two further songs, Touch the Sky and Into the Open Air, were composed by Alex Mandel, the former with lyrics co-written by director Mark Andrews and Mandel, the latter improved. The latter written solely by Mandel, and both were performed by Scottish singer Julie Follis, whose vocals were used within the film to represent Merida's unspoken inner thoughts and emotional state at key moments, functioning almost as an interior musical voice for the character rather than as diegetic performance. Both of these Fowlis performed tracks were produced by composer and arranger Jim Sutherland, who also performed on the recordings himself. Sutherland's involvement in the production extended well beyond his production credit. He played a significant role in connecting composer Patrick Doyle with a network of specialist Celtic musicians who ultimately contributed performances to the score helping to ensure the authenticity Doyle was pursuing in his instrumentation and arrangements. Sutherland was also responsible for discovering young Gaelic singer Peggy Barker, whose talents led to her being cast both as the singing voice contributing to the film's Gaelic vocal passages and ultimately as the speaking and singing voice of the character of young Merida herself, a rare case of a single musical discovery feeding directly into a significant casting decision for the film. The film's soundtrack album was released by Walt Disney Records on both compact disc and as a digital download on June 19, 2012, just days ahead of the film's wide theatrical release, allowing audiences to access the music around the same time they were first able to see the finished film in theaters. The musical achievements of Brave were widely recognized in the award cycle that followed the film's release. Learn Me Right, the Mumford and Sons and Birdie collaboration received a nomination for the Grammy Award for Best Song Written for Visual Media and also earned recognition from several critics, organizations, and awards bodies, specifically in original song categories. Doyle's score itself, along with the film's broader musical achievement, was honored by the International Film Music Critics Association, which recognized Doyle's work as the best original score for an animated feature that year, and the Annie Awards, the animation industry's most prominent dedicated awards body, nominated the film's music team, comprising Doyle, Mark Andrews, and Alex Mandel, for its achievement in music for an animated feature production. Release theatrical The path to Brave's theatrical release involved several changes of date before the film's eventual arrival in the summer of 2012. The project was originally slated for a holiday season release in 2011, positioning it as a potential awards season and holiday box office contender. That date was subsequently pushed back, with the film first moved to a June 15, 2012 release date before shifting again to its final release date of June 22, 2012. A scheduling pattern that reflected the extended and at times turbulent development process the film had gone through, including the mid production change in director ahead of the film's wide release. Pixar took the step of publicly screening the first 30 minutes of the finished film on April 3, 2012, a promotional preview that was reported to have generated a positive reaction from audiences who attended, helping build early anticipation for the finished feature in the months leading up to its release. Brave had its world premiere not in a major American media capital but at a film festival. It debuted on the closing day of the Seattle International Film Festival on June 10, 2012. From there, the film continued its rollout through a series of high profile festival and gala premieres around the world. It received its Australian premiere the following day, June 11, 2012, as part of the Sydney Film Festival. Its domestic Hollywood premiere followed on June 18, 2012, held at the Dolby Theatre in Hollywood as part of the Los Angeles Film Festival, a fitting venue choice given the film's status as the debut feature length presentation of the Dolby Atmos sound format the theatre had been built in part to showcase. The film's European premiere took place at the Taormina Film Festival in Sicily on June 23, 2012, immediately following its North American theatrical opening. Perhaps the most symbolically significant of these premiere events was the film's British premiere, held at the Edinburgh International Film Festival on June 30, 2012, a homecoming of sorts for a film so thoroughly rooted in Scottish setting, culture, and mythology. The Edinburgh premiere drew a substantial contingent of cast and creative talent connected to the film's Scottish identity, including lead voice actress Kelly Macdonald, along with Robbie Coltrane, Craig Ferguson, Brian Cox, Kevin McKidd, Ewan Bremner, Kate Dickey, singer Julie Fowlis, composer Patrick Doyle, actress Daniela Nardini, and Scotland's First Minister at the time, Alex Salmond, whose attendance also tied into the formal tartan registration ceremony connected to the film's release. When Brave opened wide in North America on June 22, 2012, It did so on an unprecedented scale for a Pixar release. The film opened in 4,164 theaters, setting a new record for the widest release of any Pixar film to that point, surpassing the previous record held by Cars 2, which had opened in 4,115 theaters the year before. Of those theaters, 2,790 offered 3D screenings, reflecting the continued industry wide emphasis on 3D exhibition for major animated tentpole releases during this period. Beyond the standard theatrical prints, the film's Dolby Atmos presentation was made available in a select group of just 14 theaters equipped with the new technology at launch, a deliberately limited rollout befitting a genuinely new format being tested commercially for the first time. Nearly half of these 14 Atmos equipped venues were located in California in cities including Burbank, Century City, Fremont, Hollywood, San Francisco, and Sherman Oaks, while the remaining Atmos theaters were spread across seven other US states: Florida, Missouri, New Jersey, Nevada, Illinois, and Texas, as well as one location in Toronto, Ontario, marking the format's debut presence outside the United States as well. Theaters not equipped for the new Atmos format instead presented the film using the more widely available Dolby Surround 7.1 configuration. Pre release industry tracking ahead of the film's opening had suggested a relatively modest opening weekend by Pixar's own historical standards, with analysts projecting an opening in the range of $55 million to $65 million domestically. This projection was noted at the time as being somewhat below the average opening for a Pixar release, and some industry trackers speculated that the film's marketing, which leaned heavily into its identity as a princess story, might limit its appeal among male moviegoers relative to Pixar's more traditionally gender neutral prior releases. When the film actually opened, it outperformed the lower end of those projections. Brave debuted with $24.6 million on its opening day and went on to finish its opening weekend with $66, $3 million in North America, coincidentally matching almost exactly the opening weekend total of Pixar's previous release, Cars 2, and landing at the upper end of the range analysts had forecast. This opening weekend figure ranked as the seventh largest June opening weekend recorded up to that point, and the sixth largest opening weekend in Pixar's history. Notably, despite the pre release concern that the film's princess framing might skew its audience heavily female, the actual opening weekend audience breakdown was estimated at 43% male and 57% female, a gender split that, while still tilted female, was considerably more balanced than some industry trackers had anticipated going into the release. The film's international rollout, which continued in the weeks following its North American debut, opened somewhat more modestly relative to the scale of some of the other major titles competing in the marketplace that summer. In its first weekend of release across 10 international markets, Brave earned approximately $14 million, placing it in third position among new releases that weekend behind both Madagascar 3, Europa's Most Wanted, and the live action fantasy film Snow White and the Huntsman. Among individual territories, the film's strongest openings came in France and the broader Maghreb region, where it earned roughly $6.5 million, followed by Mexico at approximately $5. 53 million, and Russia, together with the Commonwealth of Independent States region at roughly $5.37 million. Home Media Brave made its transition to home media formats on November 13, 2012, when it was released on Blu-ray, Blu-ray 3D, standard DVD, and digital download. The home media release was bundled with additional short film content, continuing the pattern established by the film's theatrical run. It included La Luna, the short that had accompanied Brave in theaters, as well as a brand new short produced specifically for the home release, The Legend of Mordo. This new short expanded on the film's mythology by exploring the backstory of the bear transformed Prince Mordo, presented specifically from the perspective of the witch character, offering audiences additional context for the tragic figure whose history parallels and foreshadows the fate that nearly befalls Queen Eleanor in the main feature. The home media release also included substantial supplementary content typical of a major animated tentpole release of this era, most notably a feature length audio commentary track. The commentary brought together director Mark Andrews, co director and screenwriter Steve Purcell, story supervisor Brian Larson, and film editor Nicholas C. Smith, offering viewers an extended, multi perspective look back at the film's long and complicated development process directly from several of the creative figures most closely involved in shepherding it to completion. Years after its initial home media release, Bray received a further format upgrade when it was issued on 4K Ultra HD Blu ray on September 10, 2019, as part of a broader wave of catalog reissues in which several classic and modern Pixar titles were brought to the then current premium home video format, allowing the film's dense, texturally rich visuals, its simulated haircloth, and highland landscapes to be presented in a higher resolution format better suited to showcasing the technical achievements originally built using the studio's new Presto animation system. The home media rollout of Brave was not without its own minor controversy. Around the same period as the film's original theatrical and DVD release, Disney moved to threaten legal action against Brightspark Productions, a British company that had packaged and distributed a low budget 2005 Canadian film titled A Fairy Tale Christmas under the alternate marketing title Braver for sale in United Kingdom supermarkets. Disney's objection centered on the design of the DVD's cover art, which the company argued bore an inappropriately close resemblance to the packaging being used for Brave, creating a risk of consumer confusion between an unrelated, considerably lower budget production and Disney and Pixar's major theatrical release. Reception box office Brave proved to be a substantial commercial success for Pixar and Disney upon its release, ultimately grossing $237.3 million in North America and a further $301. 7 million in international markets for a worldwide cumulative total of 539 million against a production budget reported at 185 million dollars. These figures place the film comfortably among the year's major box office performers. It finished as the 13th highest grossing film of 2012 across the global marketplace, and within Pixar's own catalog at the time, it ranked as the studio's eighth highest grossing release. Within the specific context of the animated film marketplace in 2012, a year that saw an unusually competitive lineup of major animated releases, Brave finished as the third highest grossing animated film of the year worldwide, trailing behind both Ice Age, which grossed 875.3 million globally, and Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted, which took in $746.9 million. Dollars. This placement reflected both the strength of Brave's performance in absolute terms and the unusually stiff competition it faced that particular summer from other major animated franchises with well established global audiences. Domestically, the film's performance told a slightly different story depending on how it is measured. Within North America specifically, Brave ranked as the ninth highest grossing Pixar release up to that point, while simultaneously standing as the single highest grossing animated film released in the United States and Canada during all of 2012, meaning that despite facing larger worldwide grosses from Ice Age and Madagascar 3, Brave actually outperformed both of those films specifically within the North American market. It also placed as the eighth highest grossing film overall in North America across all genres for the year, a strong showing for an original non sequel property in a marketplace increasingly dominated by established franchises. Examining the film's performance market by market internationally provides further texture to its overall commercial picture. Its largest earning individual territories, measured by total cumulative box office rather than simply opening weekend performance, were the United Kingdom together with Ireland and Malta, where the film earned approximately $34.9 million. Dollars. France, and the Maghreb region, which together contributed roughly $26.8 million, and Mexico, which delivered approximately $21.6 million in total earnings. The particularly strong performance in the United Kingdom and Ireland is notable given the film's deep grounding in Scottish setting and culture, suggesting the film's authenticity and specificity of place resonated strongly with audiences in territories with direct cultural and historical connections to the Highland setting depicted on screen. Critical response Brave was met upon release with reviews that were on the whole positive, though notably less uniformly enthusiastic than the reception that had greeted several of Pixar's immediately preceding releases. Unlike a number of the studio's earlier films, which had frequently received close to universal critical acclaim, Brave arrived to a reception that, while still favorable in aggregate, was more genuinely mixed, with a meaningful contingent of critics expressing real reservations about aspects of its story and structure, even as they praised its visual craftsmanship and performances. On the review aggregation website Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 78% based on 254 collected critics' reviews with an average rating of 7 out of 10. The site's editorially written critical consensus characterizes the film as offering younger viewers and fans of fairy tale storytelling a lively and humorous fantasy adventure that provides a female centered twist on familiar genre conventions alongside a surprising degree of emotional depth. On Metacritic, which calculates a weighted average score from a pool of mainstream critics, Brave received a score of 69 out of 100 based on 37 reviews, a figure the site's own rating scale characterizes as indicating generally favorable reviews rather than the more emphatically positive or universal acclaim tier that some of Pixar's most celebrated releases had achieved. Audience reaction, as measured by exit poll service CinemaScore during the film's opening weekend, was considerably warmer than some of the more measured critical notices, with polled moviegoers awarding the film an average grade of A on the service's letter grade scale running from A plus down to F. Individual critical notices for the film varied considerably in their enthusiasm. Roger Ebert, writing for the Chicago Sun-Times, awarded the film 3 out of 4 stars, offering a review that captured much of the ambivalence present in the broader critical conversation around the film. He suggested that younger viewers would likely embrace the film enthusiastically, while parents hoping for the kind of genre redefining originality Pixar had delivered with earlier films such as Toy Story, Finding Nemo, Wally, and Up might come away somewhat disappointed, characterizing Brave as venturing onto storytelling territory more traditionally associated with Walt Disney Animation Studios' classic fairy tale output than with Pixar's own more novel conceptual premises. Ebert did credit the film with an uplifting message about improving communication between mothers and daughters, while noting dryly that turning a mother into a bear represented a rather drastic opening move toward achieving that goal. Peter de Bruges, reviewing the film for Variety, offered a more strongly positive assessment, praising the character of Merida as a tougher and more self reliant kind of heroine suited to an era in which conventional fairy tale princes had fallen out of cultural favor, and highlighting the richly detailed rendering of the film's Scottish setting as a visual complement to Merida's fiery, spirited characterization. De Bruce also specifically credited the addition of Brenda Chapman as a director within what he characterized as a historically male dominated creative environment at Pixar, arguing that her involvement helped the studio craft a portrayal of a mother daughter relationship carrying emotional weight comparable to some of the studio's most beloved explorations of parent child and familial bonds in earlier films built around father son or other male centered relationships. Not all major reviews were favorable, however. Todd McCarthy, writing for The Hollywood Reporter, delivered a more critical assessment, arguing that the film's narrative diminished in impact and ambition as it progressed, and describing its climactic dramatic developments as both too neatly resolved and reliant on magical plot elements he found somewhat confusing. Leonard Maltin, reviewing the film for IndieWire, offered a similarly mixed take, acknowledging the film's originality in its central story twist, the transformation of Eleanor into a bear, while suggesting that the sheer strangeness of that development had thrown him off balance as a viewer. Maltin allowed that the film's emotionally driven finale represented an attempt to recover from that jarring midpoint turn, but he felt the impact of that ending had been undercut by the shakiness of the build up leading into it. Beyond conventional film criticism, Brave also became the subject of a notable cultural conversation that unfolded somewhat separately from and after its initial theatrical reviews. A number of critics and commentators singled out the character of Merida as a genuinely novel departure from the established mold of prior Disney princess characters, praising her athleticism, her resistance to traditional courtship narratives, and her wild, unstyled physical appearance, most visibly her famously untamed curly red hair, as qualities that distinguished her from the more conventionally polished and romance oriented princess archetypes that had preceded her in Disney's broader animated catalog. This distinctiveness became the flashpoint for a significant controversy roughly a year after the film's theatrical release, when Disney moved to formally induct Merida into its official Disney Princess merchandising and marketing line in 2013. As part of that induction, Disney's marketing and licensing artists produced a redesigned two dimensional promotional image of Merida for use across merchandise and marketing materials. This redesign altered several of the character's defining physical traits as established in the film. It rendered her figure noticeably thinner, softened, and reduced the volume and frizz of her signature curly hair, and gave her rounder, more conventionally doll like eyes, bringing her visual presentation more closely in line with the stylistic norms of the other, largely hand drawn animation era princesses already established within the Disney Princess merchandising line. The redesign provoked immediate and vocal backlash from fans, feminist commentators, and parents who had specifically embraced the film's original characterization of Merida as a meaningful departure from more conventionally glamorized princess imagery. The girl empowerment focused website A Mighty Girl organized and circulated an online petition calling on Disney not to alter Merida's established appearance, urging the company to retain her original film design rather than replacing it with the softened, more conventionally styled promotional artwork. The petition ultimately gathered more than 260,000 signatures. Among the petition signatories was Brenda Chapman herself, the film's original director and the creative figure most closely associated with Merida's conception. Chapman spoke out publicly against the redesign, characterizing it as a betrayal of the fundamental purpose behind the character's creation, namely, to offer young girls and women a stronger and more substantive role model than had typically been available within the existing catalog of animated princess characters. She went further in subsequent comments, describing the makeover specifically as a blatantly sexist decision driven by commercial marketing considerations rather than any legitimate creative rationale. The public pressure generated by the petition and the broader wave of critical commentary appeared to have a direct effect on Disney's marketing approach. Shortly after the controversy gained traction, Disney removed the redesigned promotional image from its official website, reverting to imagery drawn from Merida's original appearance as established in the finished film. The company subsequently issued clarifying statements affirming that Merida's design, as depicted in Brave itself, would remain unchanged, while indicating that the redesigned two dimensional promotional artwork had been intended only for limited use within certain marketing contexts rather than as a permanent replacement for her established film appearance. Industry and critics organization recognition for Brave extended well beyond the headline wins at the major awards shows. At the Academy Awards, the film won the Oscar for Best Animated Feature, credited to directors Mark Andrews and Brenda Chapman, cementing the film's place in Pixar's long run of dominance in that category during the early 2010s. At the Golden Globe Awards, it likewise took home the award for Best Animated Feature Film, again credited to Andrews and Chapman, while the BAFTA Awards recognized it with the prize for Best Animated Film. Beyond these three marquee wins, the film collected a substantial haul of nominations and victories across a wide range of industry and critics' bodies. The Annie Awards, animation's most comprehensive dedicated awards program, nominated the film in numerous categories spanning writing, character animation, effects animation, voice acting, and music, ultimately awarding it prizes for its production design and for its editorial achievement, alongside other nominations that went unrewarded that year. The Producers Guild of America recognized producer Catherine Sarafian with its award for Outstanding Producer of an Animated Theatrical Motion Picture, while the Visual Effects Society honored the film across several of its animation and effects categories, as previously noted. A range of regional and specialty critics organizations, including the Chicago Film Critics Association, the Houston Film Critics Society, the Online Film Critics Society, the Phoenix Film Critics Society, the San Diego Film Critics Society, the St. Louis Gateway Film Critic Association, the Toronto Film Critics Association, and the Washington, D.C. Area Film Critics Association also nominated or awarded the film prizes for Best Animated Feature or Best Animated Film, reflecting a critical community that, whatever its reservations about specific narrative choices, still regarded Brave as one of the year's strongest achievements within the animation category specifically. The Alliance of Women Film Journalists and the Women Film Critics Circle each singled out the film for recognition as well, with the former specifically honoring Kelly Macdonald's vocal performance as Merida. Taken together, the critical and cultural reception of Brave reflects a film that, while not matching the near unanimous critical rapture that had greeted several of Pixar's immediately preceding releases, was nonetheless received as a solid, visually accomplished, and thematically resonant addition to the studio's catalog, one whose commercial success, its sweep of the year's three most prominent animated feature prizes at the Oscars, Golden Globes, and BAFTAs, and its lasting cultural impact through the character of Merida secured its place as a significant, if imperfectly received, entry in Pixar's broader history. The film's legacy would also extend well past its initial theatrical and award season run. Merida went on to appear in numerous later Disney media properties, from television guest appearances to video games and tie in literature, and the character's blunt rejection of a forced courtship narrative, together with her status as the first Pixar protagonist created for the Disney Princess line, ensured that Brave remained a frequent reference point in broader conversations about the evolution of animated female protagonists in the years that followed its release. Reviews number one: to be a Disney princess is to have mommy issues. Snow White's stepmother wanted to kill her. Cinderella's wanted to lock her up. Entangled Rapunzel's wanted to comb the ever loving life out of her hair. And Princess Merida, a headstrong young lass with a spirit as fiery as her own unruly hair. Her mother wants her to grow up to be a bride. Practically every day, Eleanor trains Merida in the finer points of ladyship: how to stand, how to eat, how to talk, how to walk. She teaches her lute playing and schools her in the kingdom's history and geography. A princess strives for, well, perfection, Eleanor tells her, and only perfection is good enough. The lessons are relentless, and with each new rule, familiar scold, and look of disappointment Eleanor piles on, Merida feels as if her life's not her own, that she's imprisoned in a world of her mom's making, and now the final lock is in place. Eleanor's marrying Merida off, and not to the kilted boy next door either, but to the son of one of the kingdom's three fractious lords. She's to be the grand prize in an archery contest, and whatever union results won't be of love but of duty, duty to the clans and the kingdom. Merida's having none of it. In a breathtaking moment of rebellion, she competes for her own hand and wins it, enraging the lords and infuriating the queen. But Merida's not done. Back in the castle, she slices through a tapestry depicting her family, severing Eleanor from Merida's side. "You're a beast!" Merida shouts at her. "I'd rather die than be like you." The argument grows uglier, and Merida flees from the castle with her face as red as her lashes, tears streaming down her cheeks, as she finds herself in the cottage of an old mysterious witch with a passion for wood carving. When the witch tries to sell Merida a bit of her handiwork, the princess suggests a different deal. "I'll buy all your wood stuffs if you sell me a spell." "Change my mom," Merida says. "That will change my fate." Positive elements we've come to expect a lot from Disney's brilliant animated adjunct Pixar, beautiful art, great comedy, and most of all, fantastic storytelling. Pixar stories are rooted in relationships, and the studio manages to examine even the most fractious with honesty, sensitivity, and grace. Merida and Eleanor's difficult, complex relationship lies at the very soul of Brave. But while Merida may think her mother's a beast, and Eleanor might consider Merida a brat, there are no villains here. Only two strong, caring, and might as well say it, brave women who, in spite of their differences, love each other very much. Throughout the course of the movie, Eleanor does change. Given a new perspective, she is able to see Merida not as merely a flawed project, but as a growing, confident young woman, more capable and mature than she had imagined. Moreover, she moves the kingdom away from the formulaic betrothal process it's historically embraced. Instead of claiming the princess like a blue ribbon at a fair, a potential suitor must now, as a lord tells us, win her heart before he wins her hand. But it's Merida who changes more here. She discovers that her mother, far from being a beast, has loved and cared for her as much as anyone. She realizes that all those lessons were important, that she has responsibilities and duties that she can't shirk or run away from. In Brave, Merida grows up before our eyes. Not physically, but emotionally, Eleanor and Merida wind up risking their lives for each other, and their contentious but beautiful bond mimics, in its own surreal way, many a mother daughter relationship. We see here a mom's need to prepare her kids for the real world, a daughter's desire for freedom and the ability to make her own decisions. Those teen years can be difficult in many households. Brave doesn't tell us otherwise. But it asks us to remember that when you strip away all the differences and all the hurt, the bond between mother and daughter is a thing of transcendent beauty. Spiritual elements, as mentioned, Brave is inflected with magic. It's not the flyweight wand waving of Cinderella or the more naturalistic conjugations of Harry Potter. Rather, it's something more in step with the story's ancient Scottish setting. Here, magic is mysterious, enigmatic. Dark, the witch works her magic through a giant cauldron and is assisted by a not so cute crow. Several times, Merida follows a trail of will o' the wisps, strange, floating lights that her mother tells her will lead you to your fate. The first time she follows them, they lead to Mordu, a huge demon bear that bites off her father's leg. The next time she sees them, she's lying in a Stonehenge like circle, a magic ring her horse refuses to enter, and the wisp's trail leads to the witch's door. A third time, they take her to Mordu's lair, where she discovers the bear's dark, magical past and nearly gets herself killed. The film seems to reflect perhaps a pre Christian Scotland when Druidic influence was still strong. And while the movie's narrative makes it clear that Merida's dealings with the witch are ill advised, they also help indirectly get her out of her betrothal. We also hear a great deal of talk about fate and destiny, usually pushed into the realm of social expectations more than anything spiritual. A wood carving mimics Michelangelo's painting of God and Adam from the Sistine Chapel, only the figures are bears. Sexual and romantic content suddenly finding herself naked in a field under a tapestry. Eleanor causes a bit of a stir among the nobles. She and her husband, King Fergus, smooch which makes Merida pretty uncomfortable. Though dead set against being betrothed, Merida does seem to perk up when she thinks a massive, muscled Scotsman might be one of her suitors. He's not. Later, we see him wooing one of the castle servants. A servant woman sports a robust amount of cleavage, and one of Merida's precocious brothers dives his hand into said cleavage to retrieve a key. It's suggested that Fergus pinches Eleanor's rear. A suitor flexes his pecs. A handful of maidens swoon at his exploits. Violent content, there's a reason why Romans built a wall between England and Scotland. We see the king, his lords, and their contingencies squabble over pride and other minor matters, hitting, kicking, biting, nipple pinching, and eye gouging in a raucous slapstick scene. Eleanor eventually grabs Fergus and the lords by their ears and drags them out of the melee to make the fighting stop. We don't see Fergus lose his leg, but we do see some of the confrontations with bears, battles that involve swords and arrows and claws and teeth. Two bears get into a fight in which one is killed, crushed by a rock. Merida's injured by the swipe of a bear claw. A servant runs into a pole. Merida falls from her horse. Fergus drinks from a flagon. Merida suggests that her dad and the Lord celebrate something by going down to the cellar and cracking open Fergus's private stores. Other noteworthy elements, the triplets engage in a number of stunts and pranks, exasperating the adults but rarely earning an admonishment. They also run around naked. They're shown from behind. Fergus, along with several lords and soldiers, are seen also from behind without pants. A lord moons his compatriots. Eleanor gets queasy after eating a tart like confection, burping and gagging. A stock Disney follow your heart refrain gives a touch of heartburn, and a dish of haggis induces gags. Conclusion Brave is a quite good tale, deftly told, filled with moments of insight, beauty, and humor. And of course, the animation is amazing. But in terms of content, it cowers ever so slightly. Bear rears and bear rears wriggle across the screen. Lords moon one another. Magic coats the Scottish Highlands like so much dark frosting. Brov also can be scary. This place is populated by fearsome beasts, hidden dangers, and unexpected threats, and the subject matter can play on a child's deepest fears. For sensitive younger kids, Brave may well spark a nightmare or two, which brings me back to something I wrote earlier. We've come to expect a lot from Pixar. Ever since the release of Toy Story in 1995, the studio has dazzled us with some of the finest, most family friendly movies ever. In this humble reviewer's opinion, not even Disney in its golden age, 1939-47, or Renaissance, 1989-2000, can match Pixar's present run, all of which sets up Brave as a bit of a disappointment, except in the area of its familiar lessons learned by both mother and daughter. They're not just magical, they're practical, they're discerning, and they're inspiring.